Reverend Dr. William L. Johnson III here with our morning meditation. I'm excited about this morning meditation. I don't know, maybe because I'm going through some of the things that the morning meditation really is speaking of today. But whatever it is, I want to welcome you. And I'm aware that you have a lot of things that are going on in your life, a lot of challenges that you may be facing, and even some joys. It's that season in which we celebrate our families. Some are celebrating children who are graduating. Others are just looking forward to the spring of the year and summer on its way. Whatever it is that's happening in your life, welcome to our morning meditation. We're glad to be able to share with you today. Well, today's morning meditation is entitled Dealing with the Desert. Dealing with the Desert. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, every time and every now and then, we might find ourselves going through life in places where we have enough of everything. I know it doesn't happen to most of us all the time. None of us really have everything that we need all at the same time. But there are also moments in our life when everything becomes arid, that all of the resources and all of the things that would normally contribute to our health and our strength and our encouragement, that which is happening with us physically, that which is happening with us mentally, that which is happening with us emotionally, and even that which is happening with us spiritually. Sometimes we find refreshment, but there are these moments in our lives when our lives go through what I would call a drought or a dry season or the dry land, or whether, better yet, said for today's message, the desert. The desert is a scary place because in the desert you can recognize that when you're going through that desert dry place, there is not really an assurance that you can see where the resources, especially in a natural sense, when the water is going to come or where you will find it. And so it is in our lives. When are we going to find that which would provide respite or encouragement or love or peace? And some of us are going through a really difficult desert place. How do you deal with the desert? How do you wrestle with the space in your life where what you're waiting for is not coming and it doesn't look like it's on its way? How do you manage the difficult challenges and the choices and the changes in your life in a season where things have shifted away from that which would add to your life and now keeps on pulling resources, time, talent, all those things away from you? Like Friends, I've discovered that they had all of their family together and they enjoyed moments in which everything was at their disposal. Even in those moments, we take them for granted. We assume that our mothers and our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our daughters, our friends, all of us will all be around. And so we get into all sorts of things. We are angry over little petty things, or we're not talking about some things, or maybe we just don't appreciate the time we have. We're too busy with work or too occupied in so many other things that we can't appreciate the things that are right there before us. And often we're human beings. The more we have, the more we take for granted. But what happens in the desert? The desert when the pickings are slim. In the desert when you wonder whether or not you'll really get a call from a friend, not just on your birthday, but any day. The desert when your back is against the wall and trouble looks like it's before you and you don't see how you can escape it. The desert is a real place for many people. It may be that those who are in the hospital may find themselves on the other end of a message from the doctor or a conversation with the doctor that doesn't give them a lot of hope. Maybe it's a mom or a dad that the best they can do is to have a phone call once a week with their child who's incarcerated. Or maybe it's that person who used to have it together and now they are discovering that their ability to do what they used to do on their job has diminished and they don't know how long they can keep doing what they're doing. They've been doing it for a long time, but retirement seems too far away, and their ability to make it to the finish line doesn't seem like they have the juice to get them there. Well, the desert is the desert. Well, how do you deal with the desert? I was thinking this week as I was processing. I am a fan of all kind of nature shows, and I watch how the animals navigate what happens around them. It happens to all of them. Doesn't matter what animal you are. It might be one on the lower level of the predatory scale to those who are apex predators. All of them are affected when the desert comes. All of them need water. All of them need nurturants and nutrients. All of them are struggling to try to survive. Well, when you're in the desert, there are some things that you're going to encounter. But I also want to remind you that the encounters are about building strength for the next thing. Really, deserts sometimes come in our lives, and they are dry lands, if you will. But either we are traveling through a desert to get out of the desert, or the desert time shows up in our lives and it eventually moves away. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you that the suffering doesn't last forever, that the parts in our lives that are hardest, the ones that are most difficult, all come with a moment like storm clouds that make us feel a certain kind of way. I've gotten to the age and to the place where I can feel the storm coming. I've had some knee challenges lately, and so that I can almost feel that storm coming 2 days before it arrives. And in the midst of all of that, that it feels really intense for a while, but over time, the storms do pass on and you feel better. What I'm trying to indicate and trying to share with you today is that don't be overwhelmed when it gets really dry and really arid, that there is a dry season. There are moments in our lives in which we will wonder what's happening, but the suffering only brings us to the places where we will be ultimately victorious. So I want to encourage you to be able to weather the suffering. You can't get around it. And sometimes our suffering is more enhanced because we're trying to figure out how not to deal with what we have to deal with. And when you deal with what's before you, acknowledge that you're in the desert. Don't act like you're in the spring when you're really in the desert, or in some other place in a tropical area when you're in the desert. You can play mind tricks with yourselves, but it's really important to notice, hey, I'm in the desert. I need to be sure that I take account to all of the things that I have to my disposal to try to minimize the suffering in that time. I wish I could unpack that a little longer, but for our purposes here, I just want to remind you that when you're dealing with the desert, you're going to deal with some suffering, but the suffering, in some ways, as a religious person, and not all the time, so I don't want to give that indication. Sometimes suffering is redemptive, sometimes it's not. But suffering is suffering, no matter how it's packaged, and you have to be willing to acknowledge it for what it is. But it also, the dealing in the desert, when you find yourself in a desert place, it's important to know that it does bring some suffering, but it also brings some service. So that the challenge in the desert is that it challenges us to really deal with the things that are most important to us in our lives. And if the thing that's most important to us is what we can get out of life rather than what we can give, then the desert has to continue to teach us new lessons. The lessons of the desert remind us that while we're in the difficult place, it is also a place to serve, that the more that you can do for others, the more that you can give yourself, lend yourself about the concerns of others, the less time you have to feel and have a pity party about what's not happening in your own life. So I'm encouraging you while you're in your desert season, maybe you're in that season now, maybe you're going into that season. For those of us, some of us have come out of that season and we're going into a new season, maybe perhaps. But whatever that moment is, remind yourself that it is a time of service. That when we've suffered, it has taught us lessons about empathy and compassion. That if we had never suffered, if we've never gone through loss, if we've never been disappointed, if we've never had to struggle financially, if we've never had to deal with the issues with family, if we didn't have to deal with this big, bad, ugly world, sometimes it can be that way, we wouldn't have compassion on others as they're navigating through the difficulties of life. It's important to do that. And I am encouraging all of us in a land where empathy is at a minimum to then grasp what's happening in the desert time of our lives, and to be able to have compassion on others, recognizing that they just might be in the desert too. Finally, I think it's important to know that the desert, or dealing with this desert, the being in the desert, is not just a place of suffering, no, and not just a place of service, but it is a place also, finally, of singing. Yeah, sing in the desert. There are some things that happen in the desert that can only be attributed to you and your song. It's your desert. It's your experience. It's your ups. It's your downs. It's your struggles. It's your successes. Whatever it is important to get the lesson from the desert and sing about it. I don't mean you have to write an op-ed in the New York Times. I'm not suggesting that you put it in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm not even giving that you should put it in the St. Louis American or post it on social media, on your Instagram or on your Facebook. I'm not suggesting any of that. What I am suggesting is that when you come through the desert in itself, by the virtue of the fact that you come through the desert, or a desert season, or a dryland season, or a difficult season, or a heartbreak season, puts you in the place where it ought to develop in you a song. Not a song of sorrow, not one of picking out all the things that went bad, but the fact that you made it through the desert is enough to give you a moment to sing. Sing your song. Sing it until you can't sing it anymore. I'm often fascinated, as I said, by nature, and I wonder why birds sing so much in the spring. I don't know if they sing in the winter. I don't hear them that much in the winter. I don't really hear them that much during the fall. I don't even know if I hear them that much during the summer. But oh, when spring comes, it's something about the spring that brings the song out of the bird. And here's what I've discovered. At least I apply it. It may not be correct. I'm not a scientist and I don't speak bird. But what I've discovered is that when you've gone through a long winter and you've had to, in the old days, you'd have to migrate. You had to leave home to go one place to another and to survive the winter to try to make it through another year or to another springtime. Doggone it, you ought to sing. You ought to sing that you made it through. You ought to celebrate the fact that you've come through so much. You ought to sing and tell people about how you came through the surgery or how you didn't think you'd be able to raise those children. But look at them. They're adults. They've gone to school. They've gone to graduate school. They have their own families. Or even if you have to sing a part of a sorrow song that says, I was rough, it was rough, and I lost some children, or I lost family, or I lost love, or I lost some money, or I lost, some portion of my health and strength. I'm still here. And in the middle of that, that should renew us and give us the sense that it's okay to sing. Sing in the desert. I'm convinced, or at least I believe, if you even start singing while in the desert, you might just get rain. That's what it is. Our Native American ancestors here in this country taught us a lot about a rain dance. And it was one of those things that as I read and as I study and pay attention, it was an inclination that even though it may be the dry season, you dance and sing because you believe in the coming of the rain. Yeah, that means when rain comes, the seasons change. And when the seasons change, everything changes, even us. So I'm encouraging you, even if you're in the middle of your desert, start singing for rain. I don't know who gave us this. I don't know who actually wrote the song, but I don't know if you remember the movie Singing in the Rain. Sing, sing in the desert so that rain may come. Rain symbolizing something, some renewal, some chance of a new beginning. And I'm encouraged that our new beginning is on the way. Dealing with your desert, whatever it may be, it's going to have some suffering. Yes, it calls us to serve. And yes, it invites us to sing. Well, that's our morning meditation. I'm hoping that your week goes well. I'm praying that you feel this love and this strength coming through this message. I'm hoping that you will pass it on to someone else who needs to know while they're in the desert that they'll make it through. Suffering, yes. Serving, yes. But singing just the same. Have a great one. I want you to know you're loved, you're appreciated, and you're irreplaceable. We're praying for you to have a great day, have a great week, have a great life. Thanks so much for giving us a bit of your time today. I hope that the rest of your week blesses you and allows you to bless others just the same. Take care.